Bang. The gavel hits wood. You can't. A man's voice cuts through. Bang. Again. Sir, I'm warning. Another interruption. Louder. Bang, bang, bang. The courtroom freezes. Judge Frank Caprio's eyes steel. His hand raised. His voice thunder. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. What happened next would become the most viral courtroom moment in American history. The Providence Municipal Court. Tuesday morning. 47 people in the gallery. Cameras rolling. Just another traffic case. Or so everyone thought. Until that man in row 3 decided he knew better than a judge with 40 years on the bench. Frank Caprio had seen everything. Drunk drivers. Repeat offenders. Sob stories. Real tragedies. But what he hadn't seen was someone stupid enough to openly mock him in his own courtroom. The defendant was a 28-year-old named Marcus Chin. Simple speeding ticket. $150 fine. Routine. Until his friend, loud, arrogant mid-30s, decided to play lawyer from the gallery. This is BS. The spectator shouted as Caprio was reading the charge. But nobody knew that Caprio had been waiting for this exact moment. The courtroom officer moved toward the man. Caprio raised his hand. Stop. Everyone froze. The air changed. You could feel it, the shift from routine proceeding to something else entirely. Sir? Caprio's voice was calm. Too calm. Would you like to approach the bench? The spectator, emboldened by what he thought was an invitation to speak, strutted forward. Confidence oozing. Arms crossed. Smirk plastered on his face. Yeah, I got something to say. This whole system is rigged against. Sit down. 2 words. Not loud. Not angry. But the weight behind them could crush diamonds. The spectator hesitated. Excuse me? I have the right to. You have the right to remain silent. Which you should have exercised 30 seconds ago. Caprio leaned forward. But since you've chosen to speak, let's talk about rights. Kimshina's Bilmiordaki, what came next would be studied in law schools for the next decade. You think this system is rigged? Caprio's voice rose slightly. You think you understand justice better than someone who's presided over 600,000 cases? The spectator opened his mouth. Caprio's hand shot up. I'm not done. You will listen, and you will learn something today. The entire courtroom was riveted. Phones were out. Recording. This wasn't a traffic case anymore. This was a master class. Your friend here, Caprio gestured to Marcus Chin, came in for a speeding ticket. Simple. Clear. The officer's radar showed 72 in a 45. That's not BS. That's physics. That's evidence. That's law. But the spectator wasn't done making mistakes. The cops always. Bailiff! Caprio's voice boomed. If this gentleman interrupts me one more time, he'll find out what contempt of court feels like from the inside of a cell. Dead silence. Caprio took his glasses off. Cleaned them slowly. The tension was unbearable. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer. More dangerous. You know what your problem is? You watch too many movies. You think justice is about who yells loudest, who acts toughest, who shows the most attitude. He put his glasses back on. Justice is about evidence, procedure, fairness. 3 things you clearly don't understand. Subscribe now and comment what you think about this confrontation, because what Judge Caprio does next will redefine everything you thought you knew about courtroom authority. The spectator, now visibly shaken, tried to recover. I just think that. You think? Caprio cut him off. Let me tell you what I think. I think you came in here today feeling important. Feeling brave. Feeling like you could disrespect this court, disrespect me, disrespect the 46 other people waiting their turn. He stood up. Judges don't usually stand during proceedings. But Caprio wasn't following usual anymore. I think you forgot where you are. This isn't a bar. This isn't a basketball court. This isn't your living room. This is a court of law. And in here, I decide who speaks and when. But nobody expected what came next. Caprio walked down from the bench. Protocol violation. But nobody moved. The bailiff stood frozen. The court reporter's hands hovered over the keys. You want to talk about rights? Caprio stopped 3 feet from the spectator. Let me educate you. You have the right to observe. You have the right to remain silent. You do not have the right to disrupt proceedings. You do not have the right to intimidate defendants. You do not have the right to question my authority in my courtroom. The spectator's face had gone from red to white. And here's what's going to happen now. Caprio's voice dropped to almost a whisper. You're going to apologize to this court. You're going to apologize to Mr. Chen for disrupting his case. You're going to apologize to every single person in this gallery whose time you've wasted. And then you're going to sit down and not make another sound for the rest of these proceedings. Ama asıl sak edisai olan, the spectator thought he had one more card to play. And if I refuse? The words came out shaky, but defiant. Caprio smiled. Not a warm smile. The smile of a man who's been playing chess while his opponent was playing checkers. If you refuse, I will cite you for contempt. That's 30 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. Then I'll review the security footage of you entering this building. If I see any traffic violations in the parking lot, and trust me, I'll look, that's more tickets. Then I'll have the bailiff investigate whether you've been coaching Mr. Chen on how to lie to this court, which would be obstruction of justice. That's a felony. 3 to 5 years. The courtroom gasped. The spectator's eyes went wide. Still want to refuse? The spectator's voice came out as a whisper. No. Your Honor. I'm sorry I didn't hear you. Speak up. You were loud enough a minute ago. No, Your Honor. I apologize. To the court. I apologize to the court. To Mr. Chen. The spectator turned to Marcus Chen. I apologize for disrupting your case. To everyone here. He faced the gallery. I apologize to everyone here for wasting your time. Caprio nodded. Now sit down. And if I hear so much as a sneeze from you for the rest of the day, you'll be spending tonight in a cell. What happened in those next 60 seconds changed everything. The spectator walked back to his seat. Head down. Shoulders slumped. Complete defeat. The transformation was total. The cocky loudmouth who'd walked in was gone. In his place sat a broken man who'd just learned what real authority looked like. Caprio returned to the bench. Composed himself. Looked at Marcus Chen. Mr. Chen, your case. The speeding violation is clear. However, I've reviewed your record. First offense. Clean history. Good employment record. Here's what I'm going to do. Everyone leaned forward. I'm reducing your fine to $75. I'm also going to suspend your license for 30 days, but I'm allowing you to drive to and from work only. You'll need to provide proof of employment to the clerk's office by Friday. Marcus Chen's eyes widened. Your Honor, I thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm also ordering you to take a defensive driving course. 8 hours. You'll pay for it yourself. And if you ever appear in my court again for any moving violation, I will throw the book at you. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Kim's Hina's Bilmiordaki. This case would be watched by 50 million people within a week. As Chen left, Caprio addressed the courtroom. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. This court operates on respect. Mutual respect. I respect you by listening to your cases fairly. You respect me by following the rules. It's not complicated. He looked directly at the spectator, still sitting rigid in his seat. And for those who think they can intimidate, bully, or disrupt these proceedings, you've just seen what happens. I've been on this bench for 4 decades. I've seen every trick, every excuse, every attempt at manipulation. None of them work. Ever. The morning docket continued. But everyone was still processing what they'd witnessed. The court officers were smiling. The other defendants sat straighter. The spectator didn't move a muscle for the next 3 hours. By lunchtime, the video had gone viral. Someone in the gallery had live-streamed the entire exchange. Within 2 hours, it had 100,000 views. By dinner, 2 million. By the next morning, every news outlet in America was covering it. Judge's epic takedown goes viral. CNN. This is what real authority looks like. Fox News. Frank Caprio shows how justice should work. The New York Times. Legal experts weighed in. Former judges called it a masterclass. Law professors assigned it as required viewing. Even the American Bar Association released a statement. Judge Caprio demonstrated the perfect balance of authority and restraint. But the real impact was felt in courtrooms across America. Judges who'd been too lenient started enforcing order. Spectators who thought they could disrupt proceedings thought twice. Defense attorneys advised their clients, never bring someone to court who might make a scene. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. The spectator requested a meeting with Judge Caprio. After security screening, Caprio agreed. They met in chambers. No cameras. No witnesses except the bailiff. What was said remained private. But when the spectator emerged 30 minutes later, his eyes were red. He was carrying a book, On Justice, by Caprio himself, signed. Later Caprio would only say, "He learned his lesson. That's all that matters. My job isn't to destroy people. It's to teach them." Share this video if you believe respect for authority and the rule of law still matters. Comment below whether you think Judge Caprio was too harsh or exactly right. The spectator never spoke publicly about the incident. But those who knew him noticed changes. He went back to school. Studied law. Not to become a lawyer, but to understand the system he mocked. 5 years later, he worked as a paralegal. When asked about his career change, he'd simply say, "I met someone who showed me what justice really means." Frank Caprio had proven something fundamental that day. Real power doesn't need to be loud. Real authority doesn't need to be cruel. Real justice doesn't need to humiliate, though sometimes humiliation is exactly what transforms someone. The spectator had come in thinking he could challenge the system. He left understanding that the system, when run by people like Caprio, was designed not to crush people but to educate them. The man who'd been destroyed in seconds had actually been saved. Because that moment of public humiliation had shocked him out of a path that would have led somewhere far worse. Caprio had seen it countless times, loud, arrogant young men who escalate until they end up in real trouble. By stopping this man cold, by showing him the absolute limit of acceptable behavior, Caprio had done something more important than maintaining order. He changed a life. Some lessons can only be taught by being destroyed and rebuilt. That spectator got both. But the story didn't end there. What happened next shocked even those who thought they'd seen it all. 6 months after the viral incident, Judge Caprio received a letter. Handwritten. 12 pages long. From the spectator. The letter detailed everything. His childhood. His father, also loud, also defiant, also ended up in prison. The pattern he'd been repeating without realizing it. How that moment in court had been the first time anyone with real authority had stopped him cold. "You saved my life," the letter concluded. "I was on a path to prison, just like my father. You showed me there was another way." Caprio kept the letter. Years later, when giving speeches to new judges, he would reference it, never naming the spectator, always protecting his privacy. "We think our job is to punish," Caprio would tell them. "But sometimes our job is to interrupt a pattern. To shock someone so completely that they have no choice but to change direction." The ripple effects continued to spread. In courtrooms across America, judges began adopting what became known as the Caprio method, firm authority combined with educational intent. Instead of just citing contempt, they would explain why respect matters. Instead of just imposing fines, they would teach lessons. The Rhode Island Judicial Institute made the video required viewing for all new judges. Harvard Law School included it in their course on courtroom management. Even international judicial conferences referenced it as the gold standard for maintaining order with dignity. But perhaps the most profound impact was on the spectator's own family. His younger brother, who'd been heading down the same path. Loud, defiant, disrespectful, watched the video. Saw what happened when you challenged authority the wrong way. The brother never made the same mistake. His mother, who'd watched her husband and eldest son destroy their lives through arrogance, finally saw a different outcome. She wrote her own letter to Caprio. "Thank you for doing what I couldn't. Thank you for stopping my son before it was too late." 10 years after that courtroom moment, something remarkable happened. The spectator, now a respected paralegal with a decade of helping others navigate the legal system, was invited to speak at a legal conference. The topic: How one judge changed my life. He stood at the podium, hundreds of lawyers and judges watching. Many recognized him from the video that had never really died on the internet. "I was an idiot," he began. No excuses. No justifications. "I walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom thinking I knew everything. I left knowing I knew nothing." He described the moment, the fear, the humiliation, the absolute certainty that his life was over. "But here's what I didn't understand then," he continued. "Judge Caprio wasn't destroying me to be cruel. He was destroying the worst parts of me so the better parts could survive." The audience was silent. You could hear breathing. He could have just thrown me in jail. That would have been easier. Quicker. But he didn't. He made me apologize. Made me acknowledge what I'd done. Made me feel the weight of my actions. And then, and this is the part that changed everything, he let me go. He paused. Composed himself. That mercy, combined with that severity, created something in me that prison never could have. It created shame, yes. But also gratitude. Also understanding. Also respect for something bigger than myself. Standing ovation. 5 minutes long. Judge Caprio himself was in the audience. He hadn't known the spectator would be speaking. When their eyes met across the room, the spectator mouthed 2 words. "Thank you?" Caprio nodded. That slight smile. The one that meant, you learned. That's all that matters. The next day, legal publications worldwide covered the speech. From courtroom disaster to legal professional, the Frank Caprio effect. How public humiliation became personal salvation. The judge who destroys to save, a decade later. But the spectator himself gave only one interview after the speech. His words became famous in their own right. "Judge Caprio taught me that real strength isn't about never backing down. It's about knowing when you're wrong and having the courage to admit it. I was wrong. I admitted it. And it saved my life." The courtroom where it all happened became something of a pilgrimage site. Law students would visit Providence Municipal Court, sitting in the same gallery seats, imagining that moment. Some would see Judge Caprio in action, still there, still teaching, still balancing authority with mercy. And sometimes, when the court was quiet, you could almost hear it, the bang of the gavel, the defiant shout, the calm voice of authority, the lesson that echoed through the years. Frank Caprio retired at 85, but the legacy lived on. His replacement, Judge Maria Santos, had watched the video 100 times during her training. On her first day on the bench, she noticed someone being disruptive in the gallery. She stood. Walked down from the bench. Just like Caprio had. "Sir," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Let me tell you about the day someone tried to disrupt Judge Caprio's courtroom." The disruption stopped immediately. The lessons continued. 20 years after the original incident, a documentary was made. Destroyed and Rebuilt, the Frank Caprio story. It featured the spectator, now in his 50s, successful, married, 3 kids. Teaching his own children about respect, about authority, about knowing when you're wrong. It featured Judge Caprio, retired but still sharp, still teaching, still believing that the courtroom could change lives if used correctly. And it featured the courtroom itself, still standing, still serving justice, still echoing with the sound of a gavel and the words that changed everything. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. But mistakes, the documentary concluded, can be the beginning of wisdom. That spectator's mistake led to humiliation. The humiliation led to reflection. The reflection led to change. The change led to a life of service. The service led to redemption. And redemption, real redemption, came not from forgetting what happened, but from never forgetting it. The final scene of the documentary showed the spectator returning to Providence Municipal Court. Same courtroom. Different judge. He sat in the gallery, watching case after case. When court adjourned, he approached the bench. "Can I help you, sir?" Judge Santos asked. "I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for continuing what Judge Caprio started." Judge Santos smiled. "You're him, aren't you?" "The spectator." He nodded. "Judge Caprio said you were his greatest success. Not because you never made a mistake, but because you learned from it completely." They shook hands. Two people connected by a moment of destruction that led to creation. As he left, law students recognized him. "Aren't you?" "Yes," he said simply. "I'm the guy who got destroyed by Judge Caprio. Best thing that ever happened to me." That's the power of real authority. Real justice. Real leadership. It doesn't just punish, it transforms. It doesn't just maintain order, it creates opportunity for change. It doesn't just destroy the bad, it makes space for the good to grow. Judge Frank Caprio understood this better than anyone. Every gavel strike was a chance to teach. Every stern word was an opportunity to redirect. Every moment of severity was balanced with the possibility of mercy. And in that courtroom in Providence, one loud spectator learned what millions would later understand. Sometimes being destroyed is exactly what saves you. Sometimes the biggest mistake of your life becomes the best thing that ever happened. Sometimes the moment you think you're finished is actually the moment you truly begin. The gavel falls. The lesson echoes. Justice continues. Lives change. And somewhere, someone else is learning that real authority doesn't crush people. It rebuilds them into something better than they were before.